I went to school and everything on in Roslyn, Long Island. And if you know anything about Roslyn, Long Island, it's a super high-end area. As a matter of fact, my father used to kid around and say, "Oh, I live in a neighborhood. Everyone's a professional," and he would say, "And I'm a professional gangster." So the whole neighborhood are all professionals, and yeah, I had six brothers and sisters. We were pretty close as kids. I'm assuming most people know my dad was Sonny Franzese. He's passed away, and we lived in our house. For me, earliest memories was 47 Shrub Hollow Road. I think we also lived in Franklin Square or Valley Stream for about 6 months after Brooklyn. I don't recall exactly. And uh, there's a lot of ambiguous things to say here. I thought everything was fine. Um, I had no knowledge as a young person that there was anything different about my family and others until a lot of newspaper articles started coming out while I was in school. And there was an absence of my dad. I think I was about 5 years old when he was just gone. And later I understood he was being held on bail for the homicide case that he had and eventually got acquitted from. But later on, even when I started first grade, there were lots of newspaper articles, and you know, I was really raised like I was just a young kid. My sister Lorraine says I was this happy-go-lucky kid. I had friends in the neighborhood. When I went to school, I would hold hands with my friend walking down the halls because it was first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth. There were older kids. I was scared, all of the above. And at some point around second grade, I started to get a lot of flack because of the notoriety of my dad in school, and kids would make fun of me. And I wasn't a fighter. I mean, at that time, I just wasn't. And it's like I didn't understand. Why are you bothered? Why are you saying that about my dad? He's just my dad. Like, we were never told that there was anything called a mob or mafia. We never used the word mafia. I don't even when my dad got out of jail in 19, that just wasn't our word. It was our crew, our family, and and then we had an idea, but it was a little tough because not knowing, I just didn't understand why all of a sudden kids I went to school with were taking this attitude. Now they must have heard it from their parents, and I don't want to say that my childhood was in school was terrible, but it certainly was confusing, and we never came home with our problems. So, like, I never asked my older brothers and sisters, or like Michael, or to help me get out of trouble, or people were scaring me. And, I just never did that, asked Michael or Carmine. And For instance, there was a time when I was, when you're kind of getting picked on, and I'm not saying I'm no victim, but it was a little difficult when you're kind of getting picked on. You want to make up for that. So I started getting into a little trouble, being mischievous in school. I was a really good student, but I'd be mischievous. And we're in, I think it was third grade or fourth. I don't remember. There was a recess, and we're outside playing, and all of a sudden, this, yeah, it was a black car because everyone was wondering who's driving onto the blacktop where the basketball courts were, because no one ever did that. And my cousin Tootie and my uncle Joey Brancato get out of the car, and they don't even talk to the teachers. They call me over. And my mother must have told my cousin Tootie, my dad was in jail, that I was getting in trouble in school. And he called me over and he says, listen, you want to be a big shot? You want to answer teachers and get in trouble? He said, I'll make you feel this big. And he went like that. And Tootie was a big guy. And I was like, holy cow. And, uh, and then I went back, and then he left, and I went back to playing. But that caused a bit of a scene in the school too. But it definitely worked for a little while.
Made you
With me.
nervous, huh? Made you
Hell
nervous?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. He was my first cousin, but he was a lot older than me because my father had 17 brothers and sisters, and my dad was the youngest boy, and he was the second oldest boy's son, my uncle Mikey's son. But eventually, me and Tootie was very good to me over the years. As I got older, became a man, I liked Tootie a lot. And he took a liking to me aside from being his cousin in that other life. So,
Were there a lot of people that were related to Sonny that were involved with the mob?
well, in the earlier days, I don't believe so. I mean, other than Michael and Tootie, we didn't have any other family members that were made members of organized crime. I mean, they proposed me, I don't know, somewhere I was either 18 or somewhere between 18 and 20. I know it was close enough. My dad had gotten out on parole in 1978. And Michael came down and told me that they're going to propose me and that I'm now proposed. When I'm proposed, I got to act differently, this and that. But no, at that time there weren't. There was just Michael and Tootie, and then later on, my cousin Michael Catapano became a good got made somewhere in the late 90s or early 2000s. I think it was prior to 2000 because he ended up being really close with Tommy Giola while my dad was away. And I think that's how he got straightened out through Tommy.
Michael's older than you, right?
He's 9 years older than me.
He's not Sonny's real son, right?
Bill, I hope you don't mind this answer. I understand certain things people like to hear, and, it's interesting. For me, none of my brothers and sisters were anything other than my brothers and sisters. And
Yeah.
you couldn't see anything like that from my dad or me or my two younger sisters or and Michael, Lorraine, Carmine. You couldn't see that with us. My
Was there a
mother,
time in your life when he wasn't around? Do you remember when he first came into your life?
who
Mike, your brother, or did you always remember him as your brother?
all I didn't know, I wouldn't have noticed anything at 14 years old or maybe 12. It came up and it was like not a big deal because from the minute I became aware, I guess, he was my brother. The same way Lorraine, Carmine, Marianne, and Gia, and my two younger sisters, Gia and Tina, were my sisters and brothers. I I never that was never something I ever gave a second thought to. And personally, neither did my family except for my mother. She did not treat my my sister Lorraine, my brother Carmine, and my sister Marianne the way my dad treated Michael, and it was noticeable, and it was extremely uncomfortable for me seeing her do that.
How would she treat him?
She was, let's just say, at Christmas we'd get better presents. The way she would make remarks about them and in front of them sometimes, and the way she talked to my dad about them in the house. And it was just not pleasant for me as a child because I never felt that way. I didn't like that.
But your dad always treated him like a son to him.
My dad and Michael had more in common than any of us other kids, no matter what. And I always say that because people say I look like them and I sound like them. Yeah, but I saw the two of them together. They think a lot of ways alike at that time, and they were a good team. I gotta tell you.
Now, when
So
you were coming up, I heard a lot about you in the streets. A lot of people told me stories about you in the streets and things you were doing. How did you get introduced into that life? And did Michael kind of take you under his wing?
I was about 16. I tell this story because it seems a lot of people have asked. You're getting older. I'm 15, 16. It's kind of like obvious there is an organized crime and that the FBI and the United States government doesn't just only hate Italians and they picked on my father. That was the story they stuck with until I was 16. Michael took me to a restaurant. It was called Chung King on Herrick's Road and Hillside Avenue. It was right next to Puccio's Pizzeria and across from Jan's Ice Cream House in the Herrick Shopping Center. And he sat me down and he told me everything. After he told me, listen, we're going to talk, Michael had gotten made the day before. And he took me out to eat the next night, just me and him. And I
Halloween. He got
always,
made Halloween, didn't he? On Halloween night.
I don't remember the time of year. I remember where, because Chung King wasn't the greatest Chinese food, but they had the best poo poo platters. Do you remember poo poo
Yeah,
platters?
yeah, yeah.
They don't have them no more.
Wonder
And
why. I definitely remember him.
so it's kind of funny, but I remember that that's where we went. And he that whole year, Michael was not acting any different, but something was different. He was out a lot more. He seemed to have Michael was always pretty mature and stuff, but he seemed to take on kind of a different demeanor, like was more astute in that. And I believe, because I've listened to recently some of his reels, that he was and then he told me he was proposed and he was under Joe Vitaco for that year, Jojo. um, he was another guy. Jojo was in my father's uh, crew when my father was captain before he went to jail in 1969. I know Jojo my whole life. And Michael had to go and stay with Jojo whenever Jojo called him and they needed something. And I started to notice, because Michael was around my life a real lot. Uh, my dad was my whole life, and when he was gone, I didn't realize how much I missed him. But Michael stepped in and really took good care of me. I mean, we were always together. And then, he got older. I was 15. You stay out late. I hung out at the bowling alley, and Michael would dress a little different, suits, and he'd go do what he did. And then he took me that day and explained to me everything, like
Yeah.
everything.
What are your thoughts when he explains this to you?